2, 1. We are live. Each and every time it feels like it gets longer, the applause. I don't know why. It feels that way. Welcome back to the Our Real Addiction podcast. Welcome back, Joseph.
Hey.
You have been on it more frequently.
Yeah, this is my third time, I think.
So.
Yeah.
Third. I think we got a couple more planned.
Yeah.
Definitely excited. It's always always nice to have you on. That's all we do when we work together is just talk film, argue film.
Yeah, that's true.
But we're going to see Maestro. That's pretty cool.
I'm excited for that.
So am I.
Yeah. You
snagged the tickets.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for Maestro, it's an upcoming Netflix film that is going to get a limited theatrical release, so this is a part of that. But what they're doing for it is they have Spielberg, who's a producer on it, and Bradley Cooper, who's a director and the star of the movie. They're going to do a Q&A after the film, so that should be exciting to see the film in IMAX and then get to see the people involved discuss it with the audience.
Yeah, really, really cool. The cast is pretty decent, too, because it has, obviously, Bradley Cooper, but it also has Sarah Silverman,
right.
Carey Mulligan, and Maya Hawke, which that's
I didn't
pretty
know
cool.
that.
Yeah, Maya Hawke's in it.
Nice.
I'm assuming she's playing Bradley Cooper's daughter.
Yeah, I could see that.
Because it says James T. Bernstein's. But that's besides the point of this episode. This is the Napoleon spoiler review. We saw it this past week. Tuesday, yeah.
Yeah.
Which interesting film, I should say the least. Really quickly before we get into any of the open discussion or spoiler about it, it made $20 million in its opening weekend, which is a little weird just because it came out on the 22nd, which was a Tuesday, I want to say.
Yeah.
So they got the extended weekend, I guess, numbers, because the weekend started really Thursday.
True.
But it made 20 million, or I think it was $20.4 million, yes. And then since then has made $78 million. So it's been out less than a week. It's been out 4 days. It's made $78 million across 3,500 theaters in the world. Actually, I think that's America, actually. America's a big movie market. But, yeah, so if you don't know who Napoleon is, essentially he is the French dictator. He was known for being short.
Yeah.
But they didn't mention any of that in the film. They didn't play on it once. There was like one reference actually to it.
Yeah, just when he's in Egypt and he's looking at the mummy, and they put like an apple box or something that he stands on, and that's about the only reference to his height that they make.
Yeah. But this is a Ridley Scott film. I haven't really liked a Ridley Scott film in a while. But the film stars, obviously, Joaquin Phoenix, Vanessa Kirby, and Tahar Rahman. There's other cast scattered throughout it, but those are like the big three. I was surprised that I actually wanted to see this film. I heard it was they were showing it in 70 millimeter IMAX. I didn't see any promotion for it. So
I would see showtimes like available, but no advertisements. You're right. It was kind of just released, and that was it.
Compared to like the last biopic, like Oppenheimer, like where they were promoting it, you have to see it in 70 millimeter IMAX.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it just came out on Blu-ray, or it just came out on 4K, and I'm gonna be honest, when we saw it in the 70 millimeter, there's no comparison. That is a damn good experience for me, at least.
Yeah, that was amazing.
But I don't know. I don't know where this film is where this discussion's gonna go. I mean, we'll just blow it open right now. Just because it's like, I mean, me personally, I left with like, I don't know how I feel about this film.
Yeah.
There were parts I liked about it, but there were parts I hated about it.
Yeah. I was conflicted as well. I feel I enjoyed it mostly when it was being a comedy. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that was intentional or not, but his performance definitely felt as if it had comedic like timing in some parts. Like his comebacks or his quips were funny. I couldn't help but laugh, but when it tried to kind of show how terrifying he was or supposedly charismatic and a great leader, I feel it lost me a bit because it it didn't really hit as hard as like those scenes where he's kind of being a like a simp for Josephine.
Yeah.
Like those scenes were funny, and I feel it showed kind of the insecurity of his character a bit. Whereas when he's on the battlefield, he's more egotistical and he doesn't really listen to like his associates or people that are also in positions of power. He's kind of power hungry in that sense, but I don't know. It was hard to see it as the same person at times.
Yeah.
It was too like stark in contrast, I feel.
Definitely two personas that Joaquin Phoenix essentially portrayed. And I think like immediately walking out of the theater, I was kind of feeling like, was Joaquin the right person to cast as Napoleon?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just don't. I never felt fully sold with him watching the film. There were parts of him that like I think I enjoyed, but I think it's more that it was more the enjoyment of Joaquin Phoenix, the actor, and not Napoleon,
Napoleon. Yeah.
which should have been the other way around. Because then, like, I think of like the other biopic with like Oppenheimer this year, where it was just like Cillian Murphy is like, I don't see Cillian Murphy in that film. I see that's Oppenheimer. Whereas like when you watch anything other with like Cillian Murphy, like the Dark Knight trilogy or even like Peaky Blinders, I see more Cillian Murphy. I see him more there than I saw him more in Oppenheimer. This, on the other hand, Joaquin Phoenix, I'm gonna be honest, I just don't think this was one of his better roles.
No, it wasn't.
But like you say, like it was funny when he was being a simp for Josephine, which was it was funny. Like they were funny scenes, they were funny interactions.
Yeah.
Because she was only with him for the status. That's how it felt, at least.
Yeah.
She wanted the title that she was Napoleon's wife.
Right. Yeah.
And
then I feel like you have to separate the movie characters from the historical figures because it's obviously not going to be like 1-to-1. It's not accurate.
yeah.
But the way that they portrayed her definitely felt that way. Like she was mainly in it for the excess or the benefits and not necessarily for Napoleon himself. Like there's a scene where her maid asks her if she finds Napoleon like unbearable or just not having any interest towards him, and she says no, like it's not like she hates him, she just doesn't feel like the way he does about her. And I think that's kind of the way that their relationship went. It was one-sided. Either it was Napoleon that was kind of away and Josephine was holding it down, like the estate, or it was like he was there and she was kind of distant, trying to leave him. So it was interesting that they showed that relationship. I felt that was the strongest part.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, like it's not going to be a 1-for-1 in this when you're watching this film, which is 100% true because there were a couple people who lined up historical accuracy to it, and they did change some of the things. And I think Ridley Scott had said that, yeah, some of the things that you see in the film aren't going to necessarily be 100% accurate.
Right.
One of the things that I felt disappointed me was there were times when the battles were gruesome, and there were times where it felt like they weren't. Like I just feel like they were just it wasn't as crazy because like in the first like 10 minutes of the film, we see a horse explode.
Yeah.
His horse.
Yeah.
And then you have the scene, the lake scene, where it's a lot less gruesome and you kind of just see the blood in the water.
True.
And And I don't think like that was, and I was like, wow, it was just like that, which was felt like was supposed to like, which was a myth that he killed those people on the lake or whatever. He led them to the lake. Um, and it's not all that gruesome. I feel like they could have done a better, I guess, sequence in handling it, because there were times I feel like it was, like I say, was very, very gruesome and very, gory, and then sometimes it wasn't. I love how colonial, I guess, it looked. Reminded me like part of me I was watching like Pirates of the Caribbean, with like some of the way they were dressed. Obviously that's old England, which is probably way prior to this, but um I mean, overall though, the it's not Ridley Scott's best film. It's not Joaquin Phoenix's best film, and Vanessa Kirby just kind of looks like she's in for the ride of the film.
Yeah.
Like she's just in it just to kind of be in it.
Yeah.
Because the only thing I know her from is the Hobbs and Shaw film.
She was in Mission Impossible, the last one.
That's right. She was.
But I couldn't tell you any other movie that she's been in.
This is probably her biggest film. Or actually probably not. Say it was Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Or the Fast and Furious film. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how to feel, because I have like screenshots of the film right here, and it just it's like funny because like some of the scenes that he did. The crazy part was when he got when he left France before he got exiled, or before he returned to France,
Yeah.
and they stripped him of his status,
Right.
and then he came back and basically walked right into power again.
Yeah, he it was interesting to see him come back from that island, and then they're aware of his incoming like kind of march. He's going to go into Paris and demand his title. But up until that point, I don't really see Napoleon the character as like a charismatic leader.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to rally up those troops and have them join his side, I felt was not believable in a way. Just because, I mean, he wins victory. He wins these battles and he has these victories, but he's not really showing the audience that like he's strategizing in a way that he is the only one that can be winning these victories.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why the troops need to follow him and not the other people that are telling Napoleon to go back to his island. I felt in history he was described as charismatic and the troops loved him, but in the movie that's not really fleshed out. So that one scene when he's saying his speech, how he misses his home, he doesn't have like a fight against those troops, they should join him. I thought they were going to just kill him. Like, if I didn't know that this was a real person, I thought that was the end for him. Like, they were just going to turn on him and turn him into the authorities. But to see them join his side was kind of, I don't know, I didn't find it really believable. But, like, in history, that happened, I guess. And he had troops that admired him and would die for him. But I didn't think that the way they portrayed him, there would be any troops throwing themselves for him. He was kind of selfish and not really, I don't know, like a great leader. There's a scene where he's giving them bread, and like that's kind of the only thing that he does for them is just give them bread, as thousands of them just died. But yeah, I don't know. It's definitely, like you were saying, not their best work, but it's not bad like by any means. I think it's impressive actually that Ridley Scott's able to like release 4 movies in the last 6 years. That's crazy output. And it's not that they're all terrible. They're not great. I would say it's more of a feat that he got them made than like the quality of the movies are all consistently good. Yeah. So I would take like these last movies by him being okay than just being awful, because he's made some awful movies, I feel.
That he definitely has. And I love that you bring it up that they don't show that to the audience, and it feels like when you're watching the film, you have to have some sort of knowledge of the understanding. of who Napoleon Bonaparte was. And like you say, because he's known for being charismatic, and there's that expectancy of the audience knowing to do that. And I think that's one reason why critics knock Marvel films specifically now, is because of the fact that there's so much homework you have to do. And in this film, it feels like there's kind of no, like, somewhat of homework.
Yeah.
To be honest, we didn't study him in high school. At least I didn't. You're only studying Napoleon if you want to be studying those early France days in like the 1800s. So like that's the rough part, because like you say, it's not very believable that he can just walk into Paris or march to Paris and be able to just have the troops rally behind him again, because he's this amazing dictator, because we don't see that. You're expected to know that. You're just expected to accept that he is just able to do that. And like me, I was like, oh, okay, clearly he has that, that influence on someone or on all these people, but yet I'm not seeing it.
Right.
And that's where it goes into, we don't really believe it,
Yeah, it becomes kind of phony.
Yeah.
And I think that's when the movie starts to lose. Or it lost me a bit as an audience member, was just them having me believe that he's the greatest leader. He can influence all these troops. He can win every battle by strategizing. They just kind of show it happening, but they don't. It doesn't feel earned.
Yeah, there you go. That's
way.
a really good way to put it. It doesn't feel earned, 100%, because like you look at the opposite side, it feels earned that he was a beta and a simp for his wife.
Yeah.
That's just how it felt, because they properly built that persona of him, but couldn't properly build the battle or the war general and / dictator that we are so used to hearing. Then like that's another thing. It's just like they say he participated in like 61 battles and we only saw 4. The film I went in expecting was kind of like, we're going to see him conquering a lot of these countries and a lot of these battles that he did, and I thought I would have been much more invested into that film than just seeing him trying to get acceptance from his wife,
Yeah.
And I think that's because I'm, most normal, I guess they say, like most men in psychology dream about war. They dream, like they have war dreams. They are more enticed by things that have war. Maybe this is one of these times where I don't feel like I've ever been like, oh, I want to be a war hero or something like that. But I think this is one of the times where I can wholeheartedly say, I was like, yes, this film needed more war.
More war.
Like more battlefield scenes, more, less storytelling.
Yeah, they definitely could have had some sort of greatest hits montage. Like, if you have that many battles to choose from, you don't need to flesh out 4 specifically, especially if they're not even fleshed out that well. Like, the battle sequences are fine, but I feel after the first one, where he proves his wit, kind of how he's able to outthink the enemy, I think that was the best sequence, because it kind of shows his point of view. It shows him like wondering if this is going to work, and then when it does, he kind of gains this like that's when his ego kind of is taken up a notch, and he starts to realize that he's able to strategize and outwin his opponents. But past that point, he's kind of just all-knowing. He's like, oh, this is going to work. I know it. And then there's no struggle almost to kind of humble him. It's just like, oh, he just knows like the best route to go, and he knows that these tactics are going to win. I don't know. It kind of made him uninteresting in a way. And by the time it was over, when he was exiled, I didn't feel bad for him at all. I don't know if that was the intent of Ridley Scott or Joaquin Phoenix, is to have him kind of not be redeemed in the end and the audience dislikes him. But yeah, when he was leaving Russia and he returns to Paris and they strip him of his title and just say, you're going to go on this island, I didn't really care at that point what was happening to him. Like, I was just like, oh, okay, like this is the downfall of him. This is him going too close to the sun. But yeah, I didn't really feel much at that point. when it happened.
In a sense, that's also very unearned because again, majority of the film is like there's so many scenes that I feel like he's writing letters. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't want to say they're pointless because you're getting the point across that he is maybe he's not as big of this war dictatorship that we thought he was, but you are completely deriving from something we are so used to, at least in my opinion, because I mean, uh, it's it's hard to it's hard to go in obviously expecting one thing and then getting something else, because it's just like, and even when you watch like the film, there's no leading you to believe, or you watch trailers, no leading you to believe that majority of the film is him crazy over this one woman, because throughout the entire film, this is the only woman he wants, and that's the focus of the film, with a little bit of splash of a little bit of war scene. But even like at the end, like you say, when he's exiled, they say his last words were, I think it was Paris or it was France, war, and Josephine, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which I think is just so funny because she cheated on him consistently.
Yeah, I like how they had several scenes where he's reading the newspaper and it just has a caricature of his wife, and it just seems like, oh, I guess that's always happened. Where
Yeah.
in printed media, there's always like scandalous headlines and things like that. So I thought that was kind of funny how they showed like the repeated instances of her being unfaithful, but then they even just have one line to show that he's the same way. Like
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, I've been with other women, but like only some of them were beautiful, and like he only wants her. But I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny that he admitted to being unfaithful as well, but it's a big deal when she does it.
Yeah. I think it's just like the times of what it is, because I think like a lot of that still throws in like in today's like society where it's like it's acceptable for a dude to go hook up with as many women as you want, but when a woman does it, it's completely wrong. I think that just is something that is always gonna be established into like in today's society. But yeah, it's funny because even his enemy goes and visits his wife
Yeah.
and sleeps with him. Which I'm gonna be honest, that is probably one of the coldest things you can do. Like you have to give hats off to. I think it was who was it? Russia,
Yeah, it was
the Russian
Tsar.
leader. Yeah,
Yeah, Alexander.
that is that's I think that was cool. Like because like at the end of the day, like it's so easy to hate Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon. Like it was so easy to just hate him because it's just like, dude, you're kind of annoying. Like you were kind of you don't do any like there is no like battlefield sense of him. Like they don't build up the battlefield persona, and then when they actually give him the time to shine, they just completely bury this character. He's the title character, and they bury him. Not saying that he needed to be like ramped up, because at the end of the day, obviously he wasn't a good person. But even in the sense of like it's like throwaway with him being unfaithful.
Yeah.
Like it's just so throwaway. Oh, well, I've had other lovers too,
Yeah.
and it's so throwaway. Like okay, like why? Like you're right. Again, you're showing her being like obviously unfaithful, but then you go and show him like he just you throw it away, and you just like that is where you write you make it so it's even, so you can equally probably both hate these characters, because at some point I was like, oh yeah, she's unfaithful, and I kind of feel bad that he's in that position, but then they go and throw it away with that.
Yeah.
It's different. Like instead of hearing, like you need to see it instead of just hearing it, and that goes back to even the sense of like him being charismatic, all that. You see it one time, we hear it one time.
Yeah. They say it, but they don't really show us.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm gonna be honest. It's hard to talk about this film. It's hard to talk because it's just like there's really not like I guess much to say about this film. What did I forgot the disease Josephine got?
Oh, it was they said diphtheria.
Diphtheria?
She died from that.
Diphtheria. Okay. Let's looking that up. So, diphtheria is a serious infection caused by strands of bacteria called, oh gosh, Corynebacterium diphtheria that makes toxin. It can lead to difficult breathing, heart rhythm problems, and even death. Obviously, at the time, that was anything led to death back then.
Yeah.
I know he died of a sickness as well.
I couldn't say what that was. They just said it was like maybe a few years after he was in exile on that island.
It's highly suggested that he died from malignant gastritis, neoplastia. I don't know if I said that right, but that is known. So I remember reading up on it saying that there was belief that he was poisoned, but after more like examination on it, he had always been exposed. Oh, so basically what that is stomach cancer.
Okay.
So it was believed that he was poisoned, and that's what led to him being like leading in cancer. But I had also read that he had been exposed to whatever was making him sick, like at a young age. Where was it? I read it on Wikipedia, which is basically quick sparks or spark notes. I don't know how true Wikipedia is, but people use it.
Yeah.
Hold up, let me find this real quick. But yeah, I mean, where is it? Sorry. Okay. So the cause of Napoleon's death has been debated. His physician led the autopsy, which found a cause of death to be stomach cancer. Napoleon's father also died of stomach cancer, although this was apparently unknown at the time of the autopsy. His physician found evidence of a stomach ulcer. This was a convenient explanation for the British, who wanted to avoid criticism over their care of Napoleon. In 1955, the diaries of Napoleon's valet were published. His description of Napoleon in the months before his death led, I don't know how to say it, Sven Forsford in a 1961 paper, Nature, to put forward other causes for his death, including arsenic poisoning. So arsenic was used as a poison during this era because it was undetectable when administered over a long period of time. In a book in 1978, it was noted that Napoleon's body was found to be reserved when moved in 1848, and then arsenic was a strong preservative, so it was still in there. So I guess it lingered. But where is it that So Napoleon had approximately 100 times higher than the current average, which is what led people to believe that he was poisoned.
Wow.
But I think his hair was not caused by intentional. People were constantly exposed to arsenic from glues and dyes throughout their lives, which would make sense, honestly, because he was, they were putting anything on their body back then.
Yeah, they had no way of knowing the repercussions or the
of
negative
anything
side effects. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it sits at a 60%. I know I take Rotten Tomatoes with a grain of salt. 61% for the critics, 60% for the audience. Would you say you left feeling that it was about you were 60% okay, decent with the movie?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I hated it or
Mhm.
it was like a waste of time or anything. Yeah, but I'm very lukewarm about it. I don't feel the need to see it anytime soon unless Ridley Scott does an extended cut. But I wouldn't watch that in one sitting. I would just want to see like at my own pace the extra scenes, and maybe it makes it better if it's fleshed out more, since it was about like 2.5 hours long. But there's no rush as of right now to watch it again. But as far as like 60% or those ratings go, yeah, it's that's about where I feel about it and land.
Yeah. Yeah, I can agree. It's about, see, when I see a 61%, that's the, that critics give it. Again, obviously take it with a grain of salt. I basically compare it to like, that's its grade. And I would say it's about a D effort grade. Like
Yeah,
the film is about a D effort grade. But when, like you mentioned earlier, when you put out 4 films in a span of 6 years, you are sacrificing quality, for the quantity.
yeah,
But that it's still impressive that you can still put out 4 films in a span of 6 years or whatever the actual number was.
yeah,
I probably couldn't even put one out in 10 years.
yeah. You
But
have his contemporaries like Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola saying like they look up to him for that. That's amazing that he's able to get those movies produced at his age, since he's also I think in his late 70s, early 80s.
let's find out.
He's an old man, but I still want more movies from him, even if they come out at this quality. He has Gladiator 2. I'll go see that.
Yeah, that I will also go see.
So I'm looking forward to more Ridley Scott movies. This isn't like discouraging in any way, I feel.
No, of course not. It's more of like at this point, he's he's established. Like you're gonna go see a film from him, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah,
It's kind of like Spielberg,
true.
Cameron. You said how old did you say you think he is?
I want to say he's 82.
Okay, you were close. You were further the first time around. He's 85. Yeah, and I know Scorsese's old too.
He's 81.
Scorsese's 81.
Yeah.
Martin Scorsese. I know James Cameron is also very old too.
So like for perspective, I think Scorsese did Irishman 2019.
Yeah.
And he did Killers of the Flower Moon 2023. Like from the course of Irishman being released and Killers of the Flower Moon, Ridley Scott has done like double the output of Scorsese.
Yeah.
So like 2 films, he did 4. So I think it's even 4 years. Like he might even be more impressive than doing 4 and 6.
Yeah, but I feel like they've always taken pretty big gaps in between their next films.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the peak of their filmmaking, they were probably doing it at like a normal rate of the company standard back then. But I feel like as we got into like New Age Hollywood in like the early like 2000s, like they started putting out films at a less frequent rate.
That's true. Yeah.
That was also 23 years ago, where both of them, well, Cameron was 40 and both Ridley Scott were in their 60s. But I mean, from all 3 of those directors, I'll never miss it. Same thing with Spielberg. Spielberg's another one.
Yeah.
I'll watch any Spielberg film. But I mean, overall, like I would watch this film again for an extended cut. If they told me, hey, I'm doing a 4.5 hour like extended cut, I would watch that, because I'm like, you know what, I trust Ridley Scott enough to be able to tell a story in 4.5 hours to fully flesh out Napoleon.
Right.
In that sense, that's a long film. That would be a long film, but I'd be more than willing to do it.
The runtime didn't really bother me. I actually wanted it to be longer, just because his life is so long and it's so epic in scale that you can make like a mini series. You can make a trilogy of movies if you wanted, just with the source material of this guy. But I don't know if Ridley Scott was maybe the best person for this story.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows how to make a movie, but I didn't feel as if he maybe understood Napoleon.
Yeah. And that could be another reason too.
Yeah. It makes me a bit not upset, but wishing that we could have got, because I know Stanley Kubrick was planning on making a Napoleon movie. He was like really into research with basically every day mapped out of like this guy Napoleon. So he didn't get to make the movie, but I know they used some of the like research for this movie. I don't know how much they used, but I would have much rather have seen that version than this one, because when he makes movies, or when he made movies, the passion was there and he did so much research that you can kind of feel that dedication and respect. Whereas with Ridley Scott, this was almost like a caricature of Napoleon.
Yeah.
It wasn't like true to life. I mean, if you can even make a true to life biopic, but I don't know. I wish he would have explored that more, like made it more farcical. Like if it's going to be a comedy, make it overtly a comedy and
Mhm.
like just make Joaquin ham it up as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because those were the best parts for me. I loved when he was being sassy and
Yeah,
like
because
saying
it
like,
was that's when it was Joaquin Phoenix. It
yeah,
felt like
yeah,
that the actor was kind of taking over, as opposed to the reverse where he's embodying the character. He's learning to be the character.
yeah,
But yeah, no, definitely. I completely get what you mean. I feel like in a biopic, you kind of expected biopics to be long just because they're telling a story. They're fully fleshing out a story. I mean, 2.5 hours, I would say, is, you could have added more time on that for sure. Because look at, if you with an extra 20, 22 minutes, look at, I mean, like, I know obviously you weren't the biggest fan of like Oppenheimer, me on the other hand, I thought it's probably my favorite biopic. Like I admit it on many accounts, I'm biased on it
yeah,
just because I was studying World War II at the time in college. Um, and so that like ended my World War II study. So that kind of obviously everything of what I knew leading into like the war, of like actually like detailing studying the war, and then having this film came out is what has made me biased and like, okay, this film is fantastic. Um, like 3 hours, I feel like Christopher Nolan did it. Not saying that Ridley Scott is on the level of Christopher Nolan. I feel like those are two different style actors. It's somewhat incomparable just because Nolan will go out and tackle a film that he really likes, and I feel like Nolan doesn't do anything wrong in terms of the like film bros, because film bros are the fans of Christopher Nolan, whereas Ridley
yeah,
Scott has always been more of like sci-fi, dystopian sci-fi.
yeah,
Obviously, Alien. His whole career is making Alien sequels and Blade Runner, and
yeah,
so it's just like maybe this was something a little different for Ridley Scott to tackle. Obviously, I mean, I only know Ridley Scott for the films that I've seen of him, and those are all the Aliens and and Blade Runner, the original.
yeah,
And then Gladiator. But then, I mean, end of the day, I mean, it's not a bad film. It's just not good
yeah.
either.
It's. I mean, it's worth watching.
I
Like
agree. I
if you have
agree. Yeah,
Apple Plus, that's this is another Killers of the Flower Moon. Not that it's the same level. I feel I enjoyed that movie better,
I
but
would also agree.
for this, it's still interesting. They have some sequences that look nice. Like there's good moments in here, and the music was cool too. How he would incorporate kind of newer music, even though it's from 200 years ago. But it's worth exploring if you're a history buff. One of
Yeah.
those biopics that I'm sure older people would enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. This is definitely targeted towards like an older audience.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, I like how you said it, because even that they use newer music. Because I think, what was it, like War Pigs was like like the song on the trailer. I think
Yeah, it was.
it was
Oh,
like
no, they had a Radiohead song, but it was like a different, like slower version.
altered. Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like a different mix. Yeah.
yeah,
Um, you know what? I think I would see this cut again just to see how I feel about it. Once it hits Apple TV, I think that's when I would sit down and watch it again.
yeah,
Just to, I probably know, I'm more honestly, second time around with films that I tend not to like, I tend to like them better the second time, and with films I really do like, I tend to like them less the
Okay,
second time around.
that's
So I
interesting.
kind of I trend in the opposite direction of how I feel when I see the film. But I think in films I don't like, I think I see the flaws first, and then when I go back, I start seeing a lot more that I like, and then vice versa with films that I do like.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And not to bring it up again, I think the only exception is probably Oppenheimer, where I have not been like, the only two times I saw it in the theater, I was like, yeah, I did not have a bad showing. Like, did not have a bad showing.
Yeah.
Other than being cramped in the second one.
Yeah, it was pretty tight.
But
yeah.
no, sorry, that was a jinx. Nope. But I think that'll do it because I got nothing else to say about this film unless you want to add anything you want about it.
No, I pretty much said everything I had to say as well. It's interesting. It's not a failure. It's worth watching, but maybe not in theaters. And yeah, I'm just excited for more Ridley Scott movies, even if they're not at the level of some of his best work. It's still good to get something new from him.
Yeah, yeah. Because at the end of the day, I mean, when he makes his last film, it's going to be a bummer, regardless of whether it's good or not. Just because his career, you can't argue it.
Yeah.
You can't argue. But yeah, I'd see it again. I would, not in theaters though.
No.
I don't think I can sit through it in theaters again.
Actually, I did like seeing it in Dolby though, because
Yes.
the battle scenes hit harder because it felt like there were like explosions in our seat.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen a movie that way, so it was cool to see like a battle that way. But yeah, that was kind of the only. If we didn't have that, the battle scenes would have been even weaker, I feel.
Yeah. Because I'm an IMAX person over a Dolby.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm in the minority because I feel like everybody prefers Dolby over IMAX. I like a bigger screen more than I like loud sounds. But this film, I don't know why I chose to see it. There are some films where I'll be like, you know what, I'd rather see it than in Dolby. Across the Spider-Verse was that mainly because I know the soundtrack was gonna be good. But Oppenheimer, IMAX.
Yeah.
Any Marvel film, IMAX. Maybe the second showing I'll do Dolby just to change it to see if I have a different experience. But if it's offered in IMAX, I will see it. Like, that's what I'm gonna choose before I choose Dolby.
Yeah.
But yeah. One thing I want to finish before we check this out, because obviously, like we said, they did not say how tall Napoleon was, and they never really played on that running joke, I guess you can say. Oh, of course. But apparently he was 5'6".
I'm the same height as Napoleon then.
How tall is Joaquin Phoenix?
We're both short kings.
That you are. I don't even know how to spell Joaquin Phoenix.
I think he's probably like 5'10" or something. Maybe 5'9".
What's your final guess?
I'm gonna say 5'10".
5'10". Okay, let's look it up. He's 5'8". There's no
Wow.
way he looked tall in that film.
Wow.
Maybe it was the boots.
That makes sense. Because I saw him in person once, and he wasn't that tall. That's why I was thinking, like, less than 6 feet for sure. But he didn't look short. Even, like, sitting next to people, they were, like, same height.
Yeah, and I think that's why it seemed a little less believable.
Yeah.
Or not less believable, but how tall was he? How tall was he really? Because if he was actually 5'6", yeah, Joaquin Phoenix, you can get away with 5'8". You
Yeah.
can get away with that.
Maybe he was just short for people from France at the time. I don't know.
Well, 5'6" back then was definitely short.
Yeah.
I feel like people were a lot taller. We're short. Humans are short now.
Yeah.
Humans are definitely short. But like, you see, like when I think of Joaquin Phoenix in like Joker, like Gladiator, or even Signs, I feel like he's tall. I feel like he's closer to 6 feet.
Yeah, I've never thought of him and been like, oh, he's short.
Yeah.
He's not an actor that height comes into mind.
Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, camera angles also portray a way, but
Yeah.
I don't know. How short was Napoleon actually? That's a really good question. But I think that's gonna do it. Thank you again for being on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any final thoughts? Anything last before we wrap this up?
Not really. Just yeah. I'm glad the strike's over. Both strikes, because there's going to be a lot more movies that are releasing now.
For sure. It's gonna feel. It almost feels like in the sense of like when the pandemic ended and things were just like coming out. It feels like the next day we had a whole bunch of news that like dropped.
There's a lot.
I mean, I don't mind it because I feel like there was a dry spot with this podcast where it's like, okay, what do we kind of talk about today?
We're running out of movies.
Yeah, we're running out of things well, not really, because we can always revisit like old film, which is something I do kind of want to do with this podcast, but in the future. But yeah, there's never a shortage of movie news and even films to talk about.
True.
But again, thank you for being on. Thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you.
If you guys haven't already, check out Movie News Monday and check out the last week's episode, which was 150. It's just me in that episode, but check it out. This is gonna drop, I think, next Friday. It's upcoming Friday. So I think it'll be December 1st when I'm gonna put this out. So Wednesday is when I put out the podcast, and Fridays I put out the spoiler reviews. But yeah, probably put it out Friday, maybe Wednesday, just because I'm seeing Godzilla Tuesday. And I want to put out a review for that. So this might be a double review week, where it's just
Nice.
But yeah, as always, guys, thank you guys for listening. As always, I'm Adam.
I'm Joseph.
And this was episode 150. I think it's going to be 150, either 152 or 153 of our Real Addiction Sick Parvis Magnet.